Rick Lawson was just a tired space traveler looking for a good meal. After 3 weeks flying solo through the barren sectors of the Caldrix Belt, he finally landed on planet Roga 9. It was a strange place, half jungle, half glass cities, but famous for its food. The capital hub had one elite spot known across the galaxy, the Crimson Fang, a restaurant that claimed to serve experiences beyond taste. Rick walked into the restaurant wearing his dusty flight jacket. The place was quiet, too clean, and filled with all kinds of aliens dressed in luxury. Some had crystal skin, others had scales, one had a floating head with no body. He sat at a table near the window and looked at the glowing menu. He had no idea what anything was. Words like sun-egged grith beast and void-charred whisperfish made no sense to him. The alien waiter walked up, a tall insect-like creature with golden armor and a voice like dry paper. "Your order, sir," Rick smiled casually. "Surprise me." "Give me the rarest steak you have. I'm starving." The waiter paused. Its antenna twitched. "Very well," the waiter said. "One living flame course coming up." Rick chuckled. "Wait, what?" But the waiter had already vanished. 10 minutes passed. Then the room's lights dimmed. Soft drums began to play. All the guests turned toward the center of the room. A glowing platform rose from the floor. Rick leaned forward, expecting maybe some sizzling dish on a hot plate. But his smile faded when he saw what came out. It was a girl, naked, shivering, chained at the ankles and wrists. Her skin had a soft purple shimmer, and her eyes were wide with fear. Her long white hair was messy, and bruises covered her arms. Rick stood up in shock. "What the hell is this?" A voice from the speaker said, "Tonight's rarest delicacy, freshly preserved, untouched, and warm. For the honored guest at table 9. Table 9. That was his table. The girl looked at Rick straight into his eyes and mouthed something. He couldn't hear her, but he understood. Double quotes, "Please, help me." The other guests clapped slowly. Some licked their lips. Others raised their glasses. To them, this wasn't wrong. It was normal. Rick's stomach turned. He had eaten alien food before. Weird shapes, strange colors, even live bugs, but never a person. Never a sentient being. He stepped toward the platform. "Stop!" barked a guard near the stage, holding a plasma spear. Rick raised his hands. "I didn't know this was this. I thought I ordered food, not..." He pointed at the girl. "Not her." "She is the food," the guard said coldly. "You asked for the rarest steak. She's bred for consumption, fully legal." Rick shook his head. "She's alive. She's not a dish. She's terrified." Another waiter whispered beside him, "If you don't wish to eat her, sir, we can package her for later use. Or donate her to another guest." Rick looked at the girl again. She was trembling, biting her lip to stop from crying. She looked so small, like a teen girl, no older than 17 in human years. Something snapped inside him. "I changed my mind," Rick said, voice calm. "I'll take her to go." The waiter nodded. "Of course, sir. Shall we?" But Rick didn't wait. He threw his coat around the girl's shoulders, grabbed her wrist gently, and pulled her off the stage. "Sir!" a voice shouted. "You can't leave with the product." Rick didn't care. He pushed through the crowd. Some guests gasped. Some laughed. One shouted, "How dare you waste such fine meat?" The girl stumbled beside him but held on tight. Her legs were weak, and chains clinked with every step. As Rick reached the exit, 2 guards blocked the doorway. "You have not paid," one said. Rick smirked. "Then bill me later." He reached into his belt and tossed a small EMP charge onto the floor. It exploded with a loud pop. Lights flickered, alarms went off, and everything went dark. "Run!" Rick shouted. They bolted out of the restaurant. Into the neon-lit streets of Yurga 9, Rick carried the girl in his arms as she nearly collapsed. Sirens howled in the distance. Behind them, a voice echoed from a loudspeaker. "Warning! Stolen property has escaped. Subject Villaria is highly valuable. Dead or alive, return her immediately." Rick looked down at the girl in his arms. She was more than food. And now she was his responsibility. Rick didn't stop running, not when his lungs burned, not when the alien girl grew heavy in his arms, and not even when red sirens lit up the streets like angry fireflies. Behind him, robotic guards shouted orders in a dozen alien tongues. Drones zipped through the sky, scanning, tracking, but Rick had already ducked into a narrow alley, one he'd spotted earlier during his landing scan. He kicked open a rusted door and slipped into a quiet, dark room that smelled like old metal and grease. He gently placed the girl on a broken couch. Breathing hard, she didn't move. Her skin was too pale now. Her chest barely rose and fell. Rick froze. No, no. He knelt beside her and placed 2 fingers on her neck. They're a weak pulse. She was still breathing, but fading fast. Her eyes fluttered open for just a second. You didn't eat me, she whispered. Rick gave a tired laugh. Of course not. What do you think I am? She gave a tiny smile. Then her body went limp. Rick panicked. He shook her gently. Hey, don't sleep yet. Stay awake, just a little longer. She didn't respond. Rick stood, his hands in his hair, trying to think. Come on, think. You got her out now, what? He opened his wrist console and pulled up an old contact. Dr. Threx, a black market medic. No questions asked. If you had the credits. Rick pressed call. Threx answered after a few rings. A blurry reptilian face appeared. Rick, you still alive, huh? I've got a girl. She's hurt. I think they drugged her bad. There was a long pause. Then Threx hissed, YRGA9, let me guess. You walked into Crimson Fang and ordered something stupid. Rick didn't answer. Threx sighed. Fine, bring her to my lab, quietly. Use the back alleys. If they catch you, I never knew. You. The call ended. Rick wrapped the girl tighter in his jacket and slipped out into the night. 30 minutes later, Rick banged on a steel hatch in the underbelly of Jurgenein's industrial district. A small scanner popped out and scanned his face. Click. The hatch opened. Inside was a mess of wires, tanks, and odd machinery. Dr. Threx stood in the center, 6 arms busy preparing tools. His scaled face looked annoyed, but his eyes focused when he saw the girl. She's not food, Rick said immediately. She's a person. I know what she is, Threx muttered. I've treated others before. Lab-grown, memory wiped. Trained to obey, kept in sleep mode until served, Rick winced. Disgusting, Threx nodded, but not dead yet. He placed her on a table and injected her with something that made her shiver. Her breathing deepened. She'll wake up soon. Maybe an hour. The drugs are meant to keep her docile, but her body is resisting. Rick stepped forward. She said her name is Valari. Threx looked up sharply. Valari? Yeah, why? The doctor walked to his console and typed quickly. The hologram appeared showing a list of lab-born creations. Most were tagged as sold or eaten. But one file blinked red. Valari. Error. Do not serve. Unstable trait detected. Terminate. Rick stared. Unstable? What does that mean? Threx scrolled further. It means she's different, a mutation. She wasn't supposed to survive past creation. But she did. She wasn't just born to be eaten. She might have been born to change. Rick sat down, feeling the weight of it all. So I just smuggled out the galaxy's rarest mutant? Threx looked at him. You just kidnapped. Something they wanted destroyed. You've got every corporate hunter on your back now. Rick looked at Valari, still unconscious, and whispered, I didn't ask for this. But deep down, he knew he wouldn't give her back. Not now. Not. Ever. Valari woke up in a dark room, blinking slowly as her senses returned. Her skin still felt cold, but the air wasn't sharp like the display chamber. She was no longer naked, no longer chained. A warm coat covered her. The smell was different sweat, engine oil, smoke, freedom. She looked around. Rick sat nearby, leaning against a rusty pipe, holding a blaster and half-eaten protein bar. He looked like he hadn't slept in hours. When their eyes met, Rick straightened. Hey, you're awake. Valari flinched at first but didn't pull away. She studied his face with quiet curiosity. You didn't sell me? Rick raised a brow. You say that like it's normal. It is, she replied softly. That's what we're made for. Rick's jaw tightened. Not anymore. You're not a thing. You're a person. She blinked again. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. No one had ever said that to her before. Suddenly, a loud knock came from above 3 short bangs on the metal hatch. Rick stood up quickly and raised his blaster. "It's the contact," he said to Valari. "The one who can help us get out of the city." The hatch opened and a tall, hooded figure climbed down the ladder. Her movements were smooth, practiced. She pulled back the hood, an alien woman with glowing green eyes and short silver hair, named Zara, underground runner. "Threx told me you'd need help." She looked at Valari and nodded slowly. "They'll hunt her." "And they won't stop," Rick frowned. "Because she's rare?" Zara gave a humorless laugh. "No, because she's dangerous." Rick glanced at Valari. "She doesn't even remember who she is." Zara tossed him a small data chip. "She doesn't need to. That girl's DNA is tagged with a symbol from the First Empire. That empire has been dead for 10,000 years, and yet, here she is." Valari shrank back. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not just a mistake," Zara said. "You're a relic or a weapon." Before they could ask more, a loud explosion rocked the hideout. Dust fell from the ceiling. Sirens howled outside. Zara swore. "They tracked the signal. We have to go. Now." The Undercity was a maze, twisting tunnels, leaking pipes, neon graffiti glowing on every wall. Rick ran with Valari behind him while Zara scouted ahead, her pulse pistol drawn. Drones zipped past overhead, scanning the streets. "Down here!" Zara yelled, opening a sewer grate. Rick jumped in, helping Valari down after him. The tunnel below was dark and wet, but quiet. "I don't understand," Valari whispered. "Why would they make me, and then destroy me?" Rick looked at her. "Maybe because they couldn't control you." Zara checked her scanner. "You've got something inside you, girl. Tech mixed with genes no lab today can copy. If they get you back, they'll cut you open to see how you tick." Valari touched her chest. "I feel something, like a fire under my skin. It burns sometimes when I'm scared." Rick gave her a soft smile. "That fire might save us all." Suddenly, a robotic voice echoed in the tunnel. "Subject Valari, surrender now. Reward has tripled. Resistance will result in termination." Dozens of red lights lit up behind them. "Move!" Zara shouted. They ran, boots splashing through water. One drone fired. A shot it missed Rick by inches. Another sent a shockwave that knocked Valari into the wall. Rick turned back. "Valari!" Her eyes glowed blue for a second. The water around her rose in strange patterns, as if drawn to her skin. Then she screamed, not from pain, but from power. A blast of energy erupted from her body, knocking the drones back like paper in the wind. Circuits fried, lights shattered. Silence returned. Rick helped her up, stunned. "What was that?" Valari was shaking. I don't know. It just happened." Zara stared. "Yeah, now I really see why they want you back." Minutes later, they reached an old tram station deep in the city's guts. Zara typed a code into the control panel. "This tram leads to the outer zone. From there, we go off-grid." Rick and Valari stepped into the old tram. Its lights flickered, but it still worked. As the doors closed, Rick looked at Valari. "You all right?" She looked down at her hands. "Something inside me is waking up." "I don't know if it's good or bad," Rick smiled gently. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Outside, drones searched the ruins, but the girl they wanted had disappeared. Not as food. Not as property, but as someone finally free. The tram rattled through the abandoned tunnels beneath Yurga 9. Dim yellow lights flickered above. Rick sat beside Valari, who leaned weakly against his shoulder. Her skin glowed faintly with a silver shimmer. Her breath uneven. She was burning up. Zara watched from across the cabin, arms crossed, frowning. "Her body's unstable? That last energy burst?" "It cost her." Rick touched Valari's forehead. It was hot, almost feverish. "What's happening to her?" "She's not just a lab-made servant," Zara said. "She's something older. Ancient tech, maybe. Her DNA is part machine, part legend. That kind of hybrid isn't meant to survive without balance." Rick looked confused. "Balance?" Zara sighed. "There's a limiter chip they usually implant. Controls their body's energy, keeps the power asleep. But she doesn't have one. Rick's stomach dropped. So without it, she burned from the inside out. Valari whimpered softly, her hands trembling. I don't want to die. You won't, Rick said quickly, holding her tighter. We'll fix this, I swear. Zara hesitated. There's only one place that might help. Where? She looked away. The Splice District. Black market biodealers, criminals, organ traders. If anyone has the stabilizer. She needs. It's them. Rick didn't wait. Take us there. Zara nodded. But it's not free. They'll want something in return. An hour later, the tram screeched to a stop in a dark, half-collapsed station. They emerged into the Splice District, a terrifying place of flashing neon, twisted steel, and whispers in 100 alien tongues. Creatures with modified limbs, glowing eyes, and robotic implants walked the streets. Everyone looked dangerous. Zara led them down a back alley, where a metal door waited beneath a red skull symbol. She knocked 3 times. A small panel slid open. Revealing a cybernetic eye, Zara whispered, I need a stabilizer for a class of living construct. Unmarked, still evolving. The eye scanned Valari, unconscious in Rick's arms, then the door. Buzzed open. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the smell of oil and blood. A creature with 3 heads, named Voxel, stepped forward. You bring us a treasure, Zara, a walking miracle, untouched. How rare. She needs a stabilizer, Rick said. Now, Voxel smiled, showing rows of needle-like teeth. We have what you need, but first, payment. Rick reached for his credit chip. Voxel laughed. We don't want money. Zara narrowed her eyes. Then what? The creature's eyes gleamed. We want him, Rick froze. What? You're human, Voxel said. Rare, too. Your DNA perfect for breeding tech hybrids? Trade yourself and the girl lives. Valari stirred slightly in his arms. Rick looked down at her fragile face, then looked back at Voxel. No deal, he said coldly, but Voxel's guards raised their weapons. Rick glanced at Zara. She whispered, We can't fight them all. Then Rick did something unexpected. He smiled and, pulled a small remote from his jacket. Here's my counteroffer, he said. I planted 3 microcharges on your front gate. You touch her or me and this place becomes a crater. The room went silent. Voxel's eyes widened. You bluff? Rick pressed a button. Boom. A distant explosion shook the building. Next. One's under your fusion core, Rick said calmly. Voxel growled. Then hissed. Fine, take the stabilizer. But never come back. 30 minutes later, Valari lay on a table in a hidden room while a mechanical arm lowered the stabilizer device toward her chest. Rick held her hand tightly. Stay with me. You're strong, remember? Zara watched quietly from the doorway. The device clicked into place. Valari gasped. A wave of energy surged through her body, blue lines glowing across her skin like living veins of light. Her eyes snapped open. Then she screamed, not in pain but in release. Her body arched. The glow intensified. The room filled with light, and then silence. She collapsed back on the table, breathing steady. Rick leaned in. Valari? She opened her eyes slowly. It doesn't burn anymore, he smiled with relief. You're safe now. But Zara didn't smile. She stared at Valari in awe and fear, that power. It's not just stabilized, she whispered. It's awakened. Suddenly, Rick's wrist console beeped. He checked it, eyes narrowing. There's a bounty update, he said. They just tripled the price on her head? Zara paled. They know she's still alive, and now they'll send something worse than bounty hunters. Rick looked down at Valari. She's not a meal, he said softly. She's a storm. The night sky over Yurganine shimmered with twin moons. Beneath the stars, deep in the ruins of an abandoned train terminal, Valari stood barefoot on the cold concrete, silent, still, and different. She had changed, not just in body, but in presence. Her long white hair now flowed like light. Faint blue markings glowed under her skin, pulsing with each breath. Rick watched from a distance, unsure whether to be amazed or afraid. She's not the same girl we rescued, Zara whispered beside. Rick nodded. She's more. Valari opened her eyes and looked toward the sky. I can feel everything, she said softly. The wind, the power lines under the ground, the people hiding behind the walls, even the ships in orbit, like whispers. Rick stepped closer. Do you remember anything else? From before? Valari turned to him. I remember a voice. In the dark, cold hands, needles, pain, but you were the first warm thing. You were the first person who didn't want to own me, Rick smiled. You're not a thing to be owned. Zara interrupted. Then we better move. Because something's coming for her, and it's not a bounty hunter. She showed them a projection from her scanner. A black triangular ship had entered Ruga 9's orbit. It had no name, no ID, no beacon. Just a mark burned into its surface. The eye of the Forge Lords. Rick frowned. Who are they? Zara replied grimly. They're not just collectors. They built the labs that made girls like her. And when one escapes, they send a reclaimer. Rick's heart sank. And what does a reclaimer do? Zara looked him in the eye. It doesn't reclaim. It erases everything, witnesses, memories, and especially the subject. Valari turned away. Then I can't run anymore. Rick stepped forward. What are you talking about? I've been hiding since the day I opened my eyes in that chamber, she said. But I'm not just a lab creation. There's something inside me, something old, something angry. Zara crossed her arms. You think you can fight a Forge Lord's reclaimer? I don't know, Valari whispered. But I know this. If I keep running, people like me will keep dying. I was born to be eaten. Now I'll give them something they'll never forget. Suddenly, the terminal shook. Outside, a black pod descended from the sky, landing with a deafening boom. Zara swore. It's here, Rick pulled Valari behind him. We stick together. But Valari stepped forward. The pod hissed open, a tall, armored being stepped out sleek, silent, faceless. Its armor looked like molten glass, pulsing with red heat. Its hands were glowing blades. No words. No mercy. It walked straight toward Valari. Rick aimed his blaster. Stay back! The reclaimer didn't slow. Then Valari did something unexpected. She raised her hand and the lights exploded. Power surged from her palm. The ground cracked. Electricity leapt from wires and gathered in her body. Like a living storm, the reclaimer paused. Valari's voice echoed across the station, calm but powerful. I am not your food. I am not your tool. I am not your mistake. And then she unleashed. A wave of blue energy shot forward, smashing into the reclaimer like a cannon. The creature flew backward, crashing through walls. Its armor cracked. Sparks flew, but it rose again. Rick stared. That thing just took a blast that would melt. A tank, Zara whispered. It's not here to kill her fast. It wants to capture her intact. Valari's hands shook. Her power was strong, but the reclaimer was built for this. Rick ran forward. You're not fighting alone. He fired his blaster at the creature's exposed joints. Sparks flew. Zara joined in, launching a flash grenade that stunned it briefly. Valari clenched her fists. Together, the three of them attacked blaster, blade, and pure energy. It wasn't enough. The reclaimer caught Rick by the throat and slammed him against a wall. He choked. Rick! Valari screamed. Then it turned to grab her too, but before it could, Valari closed her eyes. She remembered the heat, the fire, the fear. She remembered the taste of freedom. And in that moment she let go. Her body exploded in light. The reclaimer screamed, blinded, its armor melting in waves. It dropped Rick and stumbled back. Valari hovered in the air, glowing like a small sun. And then with a whisper she pushed. The reclaimer was blasted out of the terminal, sent flying into the distant hills, crashing with enough force to leave a crater. Silence returned. Valari collapsed. Rick rushed to catch her. She opened her eyes weakly and smiled. I didn't run. He held her tightly. No, you stood. The city lights of Ruga 9 flickered like dying stars. Far above, smoke still curled from the crater where Valari had thrown the reclaimer. But even that victory brought no peace. Inside a hidden warehouse deep in the Ash Markets district, Valari stood in front of a mirror. Her borrowed clothes were replaced with a long silk robe dark blue, stitched with gold thread. Her glowing skin was dimmed by a special powder. The bright veins on her arms were hidden. Her strange beauty, once feared, was now being prepared for sale. Rick's hands clenched into fists as he stood behind a tinted glass, watching her. She's doing this for them, Zara whispered beside him, to find the others. The ones. Still trapped, Rick shook his head. It's not right. It's her choice, Zara replied. She's bait now. If this works, she get into the inner auction, the one where the richest monsters bid on living beings like art. She can find the shipping data. We can save more like her. But it's still a cage, Rick growled. She's putting herself back on the menu. Inside the prep room, Valari stared at her reflection. Her voice was quiet but strong. This time, she said, I walk. In with my eyes open. Later that night, the grand auction began inside a massive dome carved beneath the city's surface. The air was rich with incense and filth. Alien nobles, warlords, and corrupted traders filled their private booths. They sipped strange drinks, laughed at cruel jokes, and studied the catalog of products. The announcer's voice rang through the chamber. And now, the rarest. Specimen of the night. Gen-class fusion, no implants. Naturally awakened, a living relic of the First Empire. Lot 89, Valari? A spotlight fell on her as she stepped onto the glass platform. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Rick, watching from a secret side entrance, had to force himself to stay hidden. She looked calm, controlled. But her eyes scanned the room, catching every detail. The security layout, the location of the central server. The guards. Then she saw them, the cages behind the auction hall. Dozens of living beings. Some humanoid, some alien, young, frightened, just like she had been. Her fingers twitched. The auctioneer raised his voice, opening bid 100,000 galactic marks. The bidding began. Hands rose. Voices called out numbers. The price climbed higher, faster. 200,000, 400,000, 900,000. Soon, one masked bidder offered a full warship in trade. Valari smiled softly. She had what she needed now. Meanwhile, in the control room, Zara and Rick were uploading virus software into the auction's data systems. One wrong click, one wrong move, and it would all fail. Zara hissed, "This encryption is old military. Some of this tech is pre-Empire." Rick looked at the screens, each showing a slave, crying or unconscious. "We end this," he said. Suddenly, the power flickered, back on stage. The auctioneer froze. Then all the glass screens shattered. Valari's voice rang across the chamber. "No longer soft. You bid on lives like meat. You dress slavery in gold and call it luxury. But now you'll feel what we felt." Blue lightning surged from her hands. The control panels exploded. Shockwaves shattered the stage. The guards opened fire, but their weapons melted mid-air. Rick grabbed the mic from the control booth and yelled into it, "All captives run. Doors are open." The cages unlocked. Chaos erupted. Nobles screamed. Fire spread. Drones short-circuited and fell from the ceiling. One warlord tried to grab Valari, but she threw him across the dome without touching him. The masked bidder who had offered the warship stood calmly. Even as the room burned. Then he pulled off his mask. Rick gasped, "It's another reclaimer." Zara backed up. "No, worse, it's a seeker." Seekers were higher than reclaimers. They didn't kill, they collected, for study. For control. Valari turned to him, sweat on her brow. "You can't take me," she whispered. The seeker raised a hand. "We don't want to take you. We want to use you." He pressed a device. Suddenly, every freed captive collapsed, writhing in pain. Valari screamed, "No!" The seeker grinned. "We implanted them with fail-safes. You free them, they die." Rick's voice echoed, "Then what do you want?" The seeker looked at Valari. Her choice, surrender or they all suffer. Valari looked at the captives, so many lives, blinking, crying, helpless. She closed her eyes. Then stepped off the stage. "I'll come," she said. "No." Rick shouted. Valari looked back and smiled. "Trust me, this time, I have a plan." Valari stood before the seeker, hands raised. wrists open offering herself in surrender. Behind her, the auction dome burned. The freed captives lay on the ground, breathing shallow, their bodies still shaking from the implants. You made the right choice, the Seeker said coldly. Your power is too valuable to destroy. With our tools, we'll copy it, refine it, mass-produce it. Rick, hidden in the shadows with Zara, watched helplessly as guards in silver armor surrounded Valari. She didn't resist. Is she really going to let them take her? Rick whispered. Zara shook her head slowly. No, look at her hands. Rick leaned forward. Her fingers were glowing barely, but pulsing with a strange rhythm. Not random, a signal. A countdown. Zara's eyes widened. She's not surrendering. She's setting a trap. The guards reached for her, cold metal chains in hand, but just as they touched her skin, Valari opened her eyes, and everything stopped. Time itself seemed to freeze for a heartbeat. Then, a pulse of energy exploded from her body, not outward, but inward, targeting every micro-device, implant, and control chip inside the captives. The pain in the prisoners stopped. The fail-safes burned out. The captives slowly sat up, eyes wide. One young alien girl whispered, "She freed us." The Seeker stepped back in shock. Impossible. You don't have access to those frequencies. Valari looked at him, her voice clear and steady. I'm not a tool you built. I'm something you tried to erase and failed. He drew a blade of black plasma, rushing toward her in a blur of light. But Rick was faster. He leapt from the shadows, slamming into the Seeker with a roar. The two tumbled across the floor in a violent clash. Zara! Valari yelled. Now! Zara smashed the emergency override on the dome's control panel. The ceiling cracked open like a shell, and a blinding shaft of moonlight flooded the room. Valari looked up, her hands raised, drawing power from the air, from the ground, from everything. She wasn't a slave anymore. She wasn't meat for sale. She was alive and free. The Seeker rose again, badly injured but still standing. You could have been perfect, he growled. But you chose weakness. Valari stepped forward, her feet lifting from the ground. No, she said. I chose humanity. With one final surge, she summoned a wave of energy so pure, so bright. It lit up the night sky above Yurganine. The dome exploded upward, debris flying into the stars. The Seeker screamed as his form disintegrated into nothing. Silence followed. Then, cheers. The captives gathered around Valari, eyes full of hope. Rick limped over, blood on his face but a grin on his lips. Remind me never to argue with you again. She laughed softly, tears in her eyes. I almost lost everything. But you didn't, he said. You gave them something no one else could, a future. Zara appeared beside them. They'll come again. The Forge Lords, others, they won't like what you did here, Valari nodded. Then we teach them one truth they'll never forget. Rick tilted his head. And what's that? Valari looked up at the stars. I was never a dish to be served. I was never a slave to be sold. I was born in a lab, but I rise as something else. Her eyes glowed once more. A queen of no crown, a voice for the voiceless, a storm they can't contain. Rick smiled, and for the first time, the galaxy began to whisper her name, not as a product, not as a prize, but as a legend.